The Able to Care podcast is sponsored by Able Training Support Limited, who build partnerships with organisations to develop confidence and competence in their team to promote positive outcomes for all. Find the link in the description. Hello and welcome to the Able to Care podcast. I am your host, Andy Baker. And today I thought I'd choose a subject of causes of challenging behaviour or behaviour that challenges. So maybe specifically around aggression. So when I'm talking and teaching around behaviour management, I try and help people. One of the fundamental things I try to do is help people to understand why behaviour might occur. It's obviously an incredibly complex subject, and obviously I'm only going to be doing a short podcast on it today to give you a bit of a summary. But I tend to break it down into three main factors, and these do all combine together. But reflex, reactive, and intentional. Okay? So let's look at those individually, and then hopefully I'll try and get a chance to pull them all together. Sometimes I obviously used to using a flip chart and having this a visual thing. So maybe in those of you watching the YouTube video, I'll try and flag up some visuals to help. But if you're just listening to this, I'll do my best to describe it as much as I possibly can. So we break it down three. First, reflex. So reflex is, well, we call it reflex because when a doctor taps your knee, your leg kicks out. You don't plan to do that. You don't think about doing that. It just happens. The same as a baby's cry is kind of reflex. The baby doesn't kind of contemplate, I wonder what annoying noise I can make to draw this primary caregiver's attention towards me to meet my needs. It just cries. So these are kind of our innate responses to situations. So you could kind of simplify it into our primitive responses, our survival mechanisms, our fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. I know there is some others in there, befriend and flock, etc. But let's just stick with a simple four. So when we're looking at the reflex, these aren't things we decide to do. They are the kind of the innate responses, the survival mechanisms kicking in. So I often use this in the fact that, okay, so we've all been in that situation where maybe the reflexes are coming out. We've broken something we wish we hadn't. We've said something we wish we hadn't in the moment. But in that moment, it kind of felt like the choices were gone. That was the only thing available to us at that particular time. So for instance, most of us have probably felt in our lives that situation where somebody has made you so cross, so angry that you felt like lashing out. You felt like hitting them. Now, we'll assume that you didn't, but that was that moment where you felt like it. Okay, so why didn't we? Why didn't we hit that person in that moment? And there are lots of what we call inhibitors that hold us back from acting out in that way. So they could be, for instance, the fear of consequence. So the consequences could be financial, I lose my job. It could be legal, it's called assault. It could be I might really hurt that person. It could be I might hurt my hand. It could be social. People may not think I'm a nice person. So there could be loads of inhibitors that, or consequences that I'm kind of imagining that go, that's why I shouldn't. But those consequences are very different from person to person. So if I was to hit somebody, I know the majority of my friends and family would probably consider me being weak because I lost that control. But I know there's certain people out there that maybe consider me being weak if I didn't hit because I didn't stand up for myself. So depending on who I felt was the most important to me socially, might impact my view on whether I should or shouldn't hold back in that moment, or the choice of my actions in that moment. Other than consequence, we've also gone down my emotional values, what I consider to be right and wrong, also inhibit my actions, inhibit my reflex, whether I think is a good or a bad behavior. And those are a bit of a combined together, aren't they? Because there may be a situation that somebody makes me so angry and I think they deserve a smack, but the law still says it's illegal, so I don't. So it's a combination of both of those. What I'm trying to get over around values, though, is values aren't fixed. So is hitting somebody wrong? Well, most of us say, yes, violence is wrong. But if you put me into boxing ring, then violence may be acceptable, though some people still want it banned. So when we're looking at any behavior, we have to always recognize it from a principle of context. Like many of us say that lying's wrong, we shouldn't lie. But I would call acting a form of lying that people get paid an awful lot of money for. You know, writing fantasy fiction is a form of lie. So lying is creating an imaginary narrative. So in the context, like sometimes it's good and sometimes it's perceived as negative. So, but there's a reason we inhibit that. So values is a big part. Now, where our values come from, well, it could be our family, it could be the media, it could be society in general, our culture. And obviously, again, everybody's value structure is probably going to be slightly different from everybody else's because made up of different elements of life, different opinions. So we've got we've got the consequences, we've got the values, the two reasons we don't go around smacking people when we're upset. The other one is the ability to self-control, the ability to recognize my emotions and then regulate those emotions accordingly. And we take it for granted that we're all able to do that. Now, I almost guarantee that everybody who's watching this and listening to this at some point has been a point in their life where they couldn't regulate their emotions as they do now. A prime example would be the terrible twos, as they're referred to, where I am struggling to regulate my emotions. I don't have the communication skills to be able to make myself and express myself. So I may use my temper, or these reflexes are going to come out as a result. And it could be meltdown or it could be more tantrum, which we'll come on to in a bit. So most of us, though, learn through life that there are better ways to manage our emotions. The negatives, as far as that behavior, kind of outweigh the positives to being able to self-regulate or remove myself. So through teaching strategies, we kind of learn to either control those emotions or better regulate. Unfortunately, some people struggle to learn those because maybe there is some reasons in the way that their brain works. They can't necessarily inhibit those behaviors in the same way as we might consider to be typical. Maybe it's a case of nobody taught them in the right way or in an appropriate way or the way that needed to learn how to regulate, how to recognize their emotions. And some people regress in that ability at certain points throughout their life. So when we're looking at these three reasons that we don't hit, one, consequences, two, values, and three, the ability to recognize my emotions and also to manage those emotions, there's a lot of complexity going on as far as regulating those reflexes, inhibiting. So if we understand that all of us find that difficult at some point in our lives, we're all capable of losing that ability to manage our reflexes. But some people's ability is going to be different from others, not because they choose not to, because of certain emotional, circumstantial, or cognitive factors affecting their ability to inhibit. So that's one reason we might get some behaviors occur, some reflex. Now, I would say there's another factor related to this, though, which is the reactive. And these are so combined together. Reactive is the easiest way I've found of describing this is the bottle of Coke analogy. Every person that we engage with is a bit like a bottle of Coke. You don't know how many times that bottle of Coke has been shaken up. You're just the unfortunate one who walks into a situation and takes the lid off. So sometimes you get covered in Coke. Now, is it personal? No. Can it feel personal? Of course it can. We're human beings. We do personalize. We're all guilty of that at some point. And hey, we're bottles of Coke too, so that can shake us up. We feel defensive, and two shaken up bottles of Coke ends up in nothing but a mess. With the bottle of Coke analogy, I always kind of get people to think about, so if you knew a bottle of Coke was shaken, what would be different and stuff like that. But if we just take the simple principle of like people are like bottles of Coke, our ability we can cope with so much stress. There are lots of things that could shake up that bottle of Coke. So I break it down into four typically. So I say it could be a human, as in somebody is winding them up. So it's an inter or intrapersonal interaction. I'm feeling bullied, belittled, humiliated, teased, ignored, whatever it is. It's a person creating this stress in me, a social factor creating this stress in me. Okay, so that could be one thing, human. Next is then emotional cognitive, the way I'm feeling and the way I'm thinking. And obviously everything ties in with those a little bit, but if I'm feeling depressed, if I'm feeling sad, if I'm feeling angry, but also if my thinking is everybody's against me, everybody hates me, this is how people should behave and how shouldn't behave, so expectations are in that cognitive side of things, then there are things that can shake up that bottle of Coke. So we've got human, then we've got emotional cognitive. Next is location, being too hot, being too cold, if it's too noisy, too quiet, if there's a bad smell. Now, there being a bad smell doesn't mean the lid's going to blow off my bottle of Coke, but it might be a contributing factor to something that shakes it up. Okay, so location is also something we have to consider. The last one on the list there is physical. So physical is if you're hungry, if you're in pain, if you're tired, These are all the physical factors that, again, increase or shake up that bottle of Coke. So all of these, what I call refer to as stressors. They're things that stress up that bottle of Coke. But then the reflex or the inhibitor side of things is how good is this person at keeping the lid on. So you got the combination of two there. How good a person is at keeping the lid on, and also how many things are shaking at the bottle of Coke. So that's your reflex and your reactive. Now, the third one on the list is intentional. Now, intentional is always tricky because I often hear within certain care settings, they know what they're doing. They choose to behave like this. Now, when I'm talking about intentional, I'm not necessarily meaning a fully cognitive form of intentional. There is a function to this behavior. It achieves an outcome. The same as a baby first starts crying just because it does start crying. It's not thought about, it's not planned. But over a period of time, that baby learns through conditioning that, hey, when I cry, primary caregivers come. So if I'm hungry and I get distressed, I cry. If I feeling cold, I cry and they come. But maybe sometimes I'm just a bit bored or wanting some attachment and just feeling a little bit needy or whatever it is. So I then learn that crying draws somebody towards. And many parents can kind of sometimes feel they can recognize the difference in the cry when they're actually needing something and the cry when they're just wanting some connection, wanting some attention. Okay. So over a period of time, that baby isn't necessarily intentionally going, I'm going to make an annoying sound to draw these caregivers towards. It's still an element of subconscious. It's been conditioned that this gets this result. So that can be a very similar thing with certain behaviors, that if I act this way, this triggers a certain outcome. And whether it be consciously or unconsciously, I start utilizing it. Let's say you're working with a person, you got to get them to fill in forms, but every time you put a form in front of this person, they start getting very angry, very upset. They start saying, why have they got to fill in another effing form? They're fed up with this. Why can't we just sort it and stuff? An interesting question is detective on the judge? Do we just go, this person's just being ridiculous over the top? Or I wonder what the reason for this is. I wonder what they're feeling right now. What's wrong for them? Why this is causing them so much distress? Can they read? Do they have difficulty with literacy? Are those things that are stressing them out, making reading a form or looking at a form more of something that shakes up that bottle of Coke? And have they learned that if they get angry, if they get upset, we don't make them fill in the form. We take the form away, or we just show them where they can sign. Because maybe through conditioning, they've learned that when they feel stressed because they don't know what they're doing or they don't understand something, so that shakes up a bottle of Coke. But then they've learned, but when I act that way, you take the form away or you help me. Okay. So then I'm conditioned. It's an intentional. I don't get angry and upset to make you do that, but it's a byproduct of. Okay. It's become habituated. I don't know. It's an even word of just making up words on podcasts. So with that kind of understanding, they're aware. The intentional isn't 100% planned. We have to understand that 95% of our behavior is completely non-conscious. We're barely aware of it at all. It's habitual. It's ingrained. It's innate. Okay, we can have some control over it if we recognize it. But maybe for somebody who can't read, their feeling is, but I'd rather you thought I was rude than judged my intelligence. Feeling shameful about not being able to read. So therefore, I'd rather not have the shame of not being able to read. I'd rather you thought I was just rude. Okay, so there is an intentional, but again, it's a different way of looking at intentional. There's an exercise I often get people to do to understand intentional behavior. And if you're listening or you're reading, now please don't do this if you are. I saw some of our listeners driving while listening to a podcast. If you're driving, please make sure you're in a safe place before you do this. There's an exercise I often do in my courses where I get people to fold their arms and then have a look which way round they fold their arms. Are they left over right or right over left? So which arm's on top? I then get them to kind of tap their thighs or tap something in front of them and with both hands and then fold their arms the other way. And it's really difficult. Some people find it really, really hard to do. And some people almost find it impossible to start off with. Some have to really focus and think about it. Now, there isn't a right and wrong way to fold your arms. However, for many people, one way feels comfortable and right, and one way feels uncomfortable and wrong. If we take that same principle of we don't know why we fold our arms one way around the other, there doesn't seem to be any correlation between being left and right-handed or the whole left brain, right brain thing. I haven't managed to find anywhere where somebody's indicated that there is a reason we fold our arms one way or on the other than habituation, habitualization, whatever the habit word is, okay? It's just habit. It's what they've always done. It's what they do. It feels easy and comfortable, and therefore they continue it. Now, consciously, you can change what you do. That doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it automatic. Okay? So, within the arm folding exercise, if we put that over to the analogy of just like the person who reacts negatively when they're putting form in front of them, that may be a bit like them folding their arms. They don't think about it, plan it. They just do it. Once they're there, though, yes, okay, they could choose to change it, but changing your behavior isn't easy. Folding your arms the other way takes thought, takes process. You have to kind of really concentrate on it. And if you want to make it automatic, you've got to practice it. But nobody would tend to, maybe some of you will after this podcast or after listening to this, go and start practicing folding your arms the wrong way. I don't know. I don't know as much about my listeners or the listeners as maybe I'd like to. Do comment. Put a comment in below. Did you try this exercise? Did you find it interesting? Did you find it easy to change the way you fold your arms? Or was it actually quite difficult? None of you are going to change the way you fold your arms just because somebody like me tells you, you should, right? It's better to fold your arms left over right than right over left. And therefore, none of you are going to do that. Even if I offered you a tenner to change the way you fold your arms, you might put on the show for me. But as soon as I'm not watching, you're going to go back to that habit you always have, because I can't force somebody else to change their behavior. It's only if they can see the benefit of changing versus the cost of maintaining. And I think this is where the arm folding analogy or the arm folding exercise is so powerful. Nobody quits smoking just because somebody else tells them to quit smoking. If it's somebody they respect, admire, and trust, they may consider that person's opinion as part of their process. But it's exactly the same with any behavioral change. We don't know why we fold our arms one way, but it's difficult to then just change them to the other way. So if I put this into context of, let's say, a behavior like lying, for example, we could kind of expand on. So statistically, all children over the age of 3 seem to try out lying over the age of 5. So there's the experiment, isn't there, with as far as testing children's likelihood of lying, where an experimenter is asking children questions about an item they bring out behind them, and the children have to ask questions to guess what the item is. And the quicker they guess, the better the prize they get. Then the experimenter leaves the room when there is just when there's an item behind the child. But the experimenter specifically says, "Now you mustn't look. I'll be back in a couple of moments, and we can then see you try and guess with the questions." Now, statistically, every time they've run this experiment, all kids seem to look. Okay, with almost 100% likelihood, 100% look at the item behind them. At the age of 3, about 50% seem to lie about it. At 5 years old, 100% lie about it. So they're not necessarily very good at it, but 100% lie about it. So as soon as we understand theory of mind, that what I know isn't necessarily what the same as what you know, that there can be a deception, we all tend to lie to some degree or another. Okay, so maybe we could say that lying is a defense mechanism. It's a survival mechanism. There's benefits to kind of being deceptive. Okay, if we take it back to a kind of evolutionary point of view, going, if I find a stash of food, but I don't tell anybody else, then maybe I get to eat all that food myself. So maybe that is advantageous. I have come across some young people particularly where lying has been part of their survival mechanism because telling the truth has been extremely dangerous for them. So when they've run that experiment, for instance, kids who've been smacked, they don't lie less, they tend to lie better. Okay, so there's a huge advantage to lying, but they just have to be good at lying. So that's the thing, is like just corporal punishment, teach a child to be good or just to be better at getting away with being bad. So as far as the lying premise there, is it could be a case of this child lies kind of as a reflex, it's automatic, but then they have this bottle of Coke that if I'm feeling stressed, if I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm more likely to miss truth because of a fear of the consequences. But maybe I've learned that intentionally this lying has an advantage. Now I'm going to change my behavior just because you shouldn't lie. You've got to show me that telling the truth is more advantageous. There's more benefits to being honest than there is to lying. And this is where we could go into then how we encourage that and how we can teach that. But the first thing is you've got to make me feel safe. the three analogies that I've mentioned there. So we've got the reflex, reactive, and intentional. A combination of these two is I sometimes draw out as the motivation triangle. That an unmet need stimulates stress, and that creates a strategy. Or stress creates a need, and so I have a strategy to meet that need. And if we're looking to change behavior, if I don't have a strategy available or a strategy I have doesn't work, I'm going to go to the reflexes, the emotional reactions. So the ideal is always when we're looking to kind of help somebody to improve their outcomes and to better manage and regulate behavior, we either need to meet their need or teach them to do it themselves, or we need to eliminate the stress or teach them better strategies to be able to cope and manage that stress. If it's the kind of strategy thing, what strategies have got available to them? What can they already do? What additional skills they need to be able to learn to be able to manage this kind of this motivation or this cycle themselves? So hopefully you found that useful and interesting as far as the three causes of behavior that we tend to refer to. Obviously, it's a huge topic and you could go into an awful lot more depth of all the things that shake up the bottle of Coke and the more of the kind of understanding as far as why do some people reflex in certain situations and not in others, or even the intentional, why have they learned that over a period of time? But that's what we're always trying to get over on our podcast is to be curious. We want to understand people as much as we can. The more we understand, the better we'll be able to connect with them, to empathize with them, but also we're able to understand ourselves and our reactions as well. So thank you for joining me.